bill, the DC Ex-Offenders Human Rights Bill, that returning citizens have wanted to put forward that would amend the DC Human Rights Charter to say that returning prisoners are a protected class. So basically, if you discriminate against them, you can sue them basically for discriminating against you, for not hiring you. And that bill has moved nowhere for exactly that reason, because the people who fund the city councilors don't want to have it exposed to the fact that they routinely will do everything possible to discriminate against people. I mean, at St. Elizabeth's Hospital down in Southeast. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What is the name of that bill again?
It's the DC Ex-Offenders Human Rights Bill. And down at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Southeast, when they were hiring people to do this construction project, not only were they checking people's records, but they were for the simplest jobs. Like, some of the jobs were literally moving dirt from like here to there, and they were making people take drug tests. I mean, they were setting up every single possible hurdle to keep people from getting employed. And now the developers, the housing and real estate developers, have sued the city to eliminate what's called the first source law in Washington, D.C., which says that when you have a construction job, you have to hire D.C. residents first. And that is sort of an important thing for returning citizens, because they make up a significant amount. There's 60,000 people who were formerly in prison in D.C. right now, and so a lot of them are working age. And so laws like the first source law sort of help give them a leg up. If you sort of reduce the pool of eligible people, then it kind of will force employers to then reconsider how they approach people with criminal records. So they want to challenge that too. So on every single front, you see the situation for returning citizens, whether it's in prison, whether it's, going to prison in the first place, because we know the reason a lot of people end up in prison is BS anyway, whether it's the conditions when they first come home in the halfway houses, or whether it's their ability to get employment, which is so significantly limited, really to the lowest paid, most precarious job opportunities, if anything at all. It's a rough situation. But like I said, and I'll just finish to cap it all off, I don't want it to seem like all doom and gloom, because there is a lot of political consciousness amongst these people. There are a lot of people who want to move. I mean, our last forum, it was 32 people, all black women, pretty much 95%, most of whom had either been addicted to drugs or in prison or knew people in prison. And there was such a high level of enthusiasm there amongst people to do something that it really was actually impossible to be discouraged. So the situation is negative in so many ways in terms of the material situation, but I think there is a lot of positivity in moving forward. So I'll just stop there. So I appreciate you guys coming and allowing me to say a few things.
We'll let Octavia, Ms. Matthew decide to go, and then we can get into a discussion.
For sure.
She worked on this thing for 2 months.
No, I didn't. I don't think there's enough for everybody, but I guess you guys can, every other person can take one, and you guys can share.
We know how to share. This is an anti-brutality forum, I guess?
Where you from, Susan?
No, talking to the people inside the television.
Not telling everybody where I'm
By
from.
the television in Obama.
She's from Alaska.
Oh,
Town
okay.
about
That's great.
2020.
Who do you tell?
Good, Howard.
Okay. Hey, Shu.
Adrian.
Oh my gosh. Hi, everybody. My name is Octavia Butler, and I'm a sophomore political science major from Anchorage, Alaska.
Alaska?
I'm alcohol.
Okay. So this is the clip. I don't know if you guys can all see it.
Oh, yeah.
But if you guys go to the third page, the first two pages are not.
If you double click it, I think. Uncle Ruckus.
employing definitions, timelines, and statistics as points of analysis, it is evident that the war on drugs and the prison industrial complex parallel the zero tolerance policy and school to prison pipeline. According to Michelle Alexander, the author of the New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration, the Age of Colorblindness, 3 in 4 African American men and nearly all in the poorest neighborhoods of Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, can expect to serve time in prison. The core representation can be contextualized by examining the prison industrial complex in relation to the war on drugs and the school to prison pipeline in relation to the zero tolerance policy. The definitions and background of the prison industrial complex and the school to prison pipeline formulate a corporate plantation that is similar to debt peonage and chattel slavery. The policies of the war on drugs and zero tolerance policy correlate as both initiatives were initiated in the 1980s and solidified in the 1990s. The policies and statistics of the prison industrial complex and the school to prison pipeline formulate a parallel between the war on drugs and zero tolerance policy. So again, by employing definitions, timelines, and statistics as points of analysis, it is evidence that the war on drugs and the prison industrial complex parallel the zero tolerance policy and the school to prison pipeline. So if you guys can refer to the definitions portion of the handout right now. The war on drugs is a campaign by the United States government to prohibit the trafficking of illegal narcotics both domestically and internationally through drug policies that discourage the production, distribution, and consumption of narcotics. For purposes of this presentation, the war on drugs refers to the domestic policy of the Drug Enforcement Agency. The zero tolerance policy is a school discipline policy enacted by school officials that specifies a mandatory and strict punishment for engaging in activities that officials deem intolerable, usually with respect to guns, drugs, and violence. The prison industrial complex is the corporatization of the prison system by businesses and banks for monetary profit and social control, in which the interests of the government, the media, and the corporations are intertwined to maintain a system of capitalism and white supremacy. The school to prison pipeline is an education system that operates as a pre-penitentiary system in which low-performing students are profiled for suspension, expulsion, or arrest, thereby channeling them to juvenile detention centers or correction facilities instead of institutions of higher learning or employment. Prison labor is not unlike the debt peonage and chattel slavery that African Americans were subject to after the transatlantic slave trade. And the school to prison pipeline is not unlike the seasoning that African Americans were subject to after the Middle Passage. Children are seasoned in the school to be obedient by predominantly white teachers, like slaves were seasoned in the Caribbean to be obedient by predominantly white overseers. In fact, there are more African American men in prison and jail or on probation and parole than were slaves before the start of the Civil War due to resource allocation, racial profiling, and the war on drugs. According to the Scotts Foundation for Public Education, only 38% of African American males graduate from high school in comparison to 88% of white non-Latino males in the 2009 to 2010 school year due to resource allocation, racial profiling, and the zero tolerance policy. According to the Sentencing Project, resources are devoted to large-scale arrests and the policing of communities of color that increase incarceration rates rather than drug treatment, diversion programs, and qualified representation that reduce recidivism rates. According to the NAACP, African Americans represent 12% of monthly drug users, but comprise 32% of persons arrested for drug possession. And while whites are 5 times more likely to use drugs, African Americans are 10 times more likely to be arrested for drugs. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, resources are devoted to full-time police officers for the policing of hallways for drugs, thereby increasing dropout rates rather than full-time counselors to assist students with behavioral or family issues, thereby increasing graduation rates. Low-performing students, who are often low-income minority students, are often profiled by police officers. Mandatory minimums disproportionately affect African American males due to the disparity in sentencing for powder and crack cocaine, and school zone drug laws also disproportionately affect African American males due to the housing patterns in which African Americans populate urban areas near schools and whites populate rural areas away from schools. Also, mandatory suspensions and expulsions due to the zero tolerance policy disproportionately affect African American males due to the disparity in expulsion between African Americans and whites. According to the Journal of African American Males in Education, African American males are 3 times as likely to be suspended or expelled in the District of Columbia. African American males are also 3 to 4 times more likely to be put in special classes, in special ed classes, and whites are 3 to 4 times more likely to be put in